Hello, everybody. Welcome back to LGBTQ and A. I'm here with Val, and we're going to talk like we do on this show about identity and that whole thing, everything about it, wherever the conversation takes us. So I'm just going to have Val introduce herself, and then we can go from there. So
Sure. Sorry, everyone. My cat is yelling right now. So,
we
you
can't hear
guys
it. We're fine.
awesome. Okay. So, my name is Val Neff. I work in mental health. I'm in a professional counseling graduate school program, and I identify as a lesbian and as asexual.
Awesome. Okay, just to follow suit, don't want to just leave Val hanging. My name is Mike. I am a former teacher, and now I'm a teacher's aide. And I am cis male, so very, very vanilla, but that's okay. I'm an ally, and that's what matters.
Mm.
Um, so let's get started. So you say you identify as asexual and as a lesbian. Um, can you talk to me a little bit about how that kind of interplays with each other? Because from my understanding of asexuality, um, it's there's like many different ways that can be. It's different for everybody, obviously.
Mhm.
So how does that kind of fit into how do you navigate that in your relationships, since you're also a lesbian and you're asexual?
Sure, absolutely. So, something that some people don't realize is that there's asexuality, but then you can also be aromantic as well.
Mhm.
And so that's someone who doesn't experience like romantic attraction. There are different
Right.
types of attraction. I do experience romantic attraction, but I'm homo romantic. So I experience romantic attraction solely towards women.
Mhm.
And then I don't experience like sexual attraction. So, in terms of that, yeah, does that kind of like answer that question?
Yeah, yeah. It's just I feel like a lot of people like see asexuality as this thing that like kind of like cordons you off from relationships, I guess. And I wanted to clear that out because I know that's not 100% true, but this is also partly about debunking those sorts of feelings and notions that people have about this sort of stuff. Um, so now that that's kind of cleared up, um, so how did you kind of arrive at this, um, your understanding of your identity? Was it a long process, or did you kind of come across it rather quickly, or how did you get to this point?
Sure. Well, I figured out the different parts of my identity or kind of arrived to my conclusions about them in different steps, I would say. So I realized that I was asexual first.
Okay.
I don't know that there was some big crowning moment that I arrived at it. The first time I really remember having like a clear understanding of it and that it fit how I felt was my sophomore year of college. I'd become really closely associated with GLOW, the GLBT club. I had a lot of close friends in it. I ended up on the board as an ally.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I,
Yeah.
at some point, I know as many do, and I realized at some point, I don't even remember where I heard it, but I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like that really closely defines my experience. I'd always, I realized that kind of later in high school, my really close friends, we never really dated. I was actually one of the only ones who dated. I had a boyfriend my senior year, and so it never really struck me that there was never that moment. Oh, everyone's really boy crazy, but I'm not. Just because we weren't really experiencing that. Um, and then my freshman year, I saw a counselor in the counseling center for being homesick, and I don't
Mhm.
even know how we got on the topic of it. But I ended up disclosing, like, not really experiencing sexual attraction. And she pulled out the DSM to
Right.
kind of diagnose it, which wasn't super helpful in that moment.
No, probably not.
No, it was actually like pretty traumatizing, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But that was the first thing that led me to realize, like, oh, this is something that other people feel too. And
Right.
then through my affiliation with Glow, I came to realize that, oh, it's an orientation, and that felt like a better fit. Although interestingly, that's it's also been an identity I've had a harder time coming to terms with. But the lesbian part of my identity, I didn't fully come to terms with until I was a 5-year student at Lawrence until my 5th year.
Me too.
Where I know, go 5-year students.
Woo!
Um, my 5th year, I ended up falling in love with one of my best friends, and we ended up dating. And um, this is such an embarrassing trope, but I had kind of thought like, yeah, I'm straight, but like I'm asexual, so I'm not really like into it. And like this must just be like what everyone feels like
Mhm.
when they're dating people. Like it's just super lackluster and you don't want to ever spend time with your boyfriend. Like that's got to just be like a, human experience, like clearly, obviously. And then when I ended up falling in love with her, I was like, oh wait, no, this is like totally different.
This is
Like
way better.
this is what it's supposed to feel like. Exactly, exactly. So I didn't realize, and then at that point I kind of put all the pieces together, like, oh, I only experience like emotional and romantic attraction with people, and I'm not capable of like experiencing that with men.
Right.
So I'm a lesbian. In that moment, everything just kind of fell into place in that regard. But it wasn't until I experienced that it even occurred to me.
Yeah. Besides, men are gross anyway, so,
I didn't want to be the one to say it, but
I will open up and say that we're pretty gross.
okay, okay. He's saying it. He's
It's all
saying
right. I'll break down those hard questions for you.
that's fine.
Um, well, that's cool that you've managed to figure that all out, and that's at a pretty, I'd say, like, not like a short amount of time, but like it wasn't like, because for some people it takes years and years and years to like come to that final conclusion, and it seems like you've like got it. So you're like, woo.
Yeah, it kind of all fell into place. Thank you, Lawrence, for that 5th year. Like, um, who knows where I would have been without it.
Right.
But no, once it was all there, it was really kind of all there.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Um, so let's see. It's been a while since I've done one of these interviews, so
Oh,
I'm
good.
blanking a little bit. It's been
Oh,
a
no.
long day. I've been working with kids. Um, so now that you've um kind of figured all of that stuff out, I know you work in mental health. Is Well, you obviously just said it, but I knew from before this interview that you worked in mental health.
Right.
Has that experience that you now kind of gone through this yourself, has that helped you in your work now, dealing with different people in different situations, like having that kind of like that life experience to pull from?
Oh,
Uh,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. I honestly think that a lot of the work I do, I've done a lot of peer work, so it's lived experience,
Hmm.
relating to people and really connecting to people on shared experiences and shared feelings, and it just totally opens up the range of different emotions that I can relate to with people and the range of experiences I can relate to with people because in the course of my work, encounter so many people who are
Right.
part of the LGBTQ community,
Hmm.
and are struggling with their mental health for reasons that aren't necessarily connected to the identity, but um, we are our identities. Like
Right.
all of it kind of meshes together. And so I can really relate to that, or I can relate to the feeling of not feeling comfortable being open about your partner, or the feeling of not being sure who you are, or things not feeling right. I can just really relate to a lot of those experiences.
Nice. Awesome. Well, so um now that you've kind of come to these conclusions, um and like you said, like you now have this life experience to pull from, is there like advice that you would give to someone maybe who's like you, or um who may not be asexual or a lesbian but just has these issues with their identity? What were kind of the things that you would say to them to kind of help them navigate this changing time in their life?
Yeah, that's such a great question. A couple of different things come to mind. And I think, one thing that really comes to mind is finding safe people that you can feel comfortable being yourself with, and talking openly and honestly with, and really kind of experimenting with, because I think so much of it is kind of just I think honestly, just so much of growing up in general, regardless of sexuality, is trying on different hats and seeing what fits.
Right.
Like even I remember, geez, like even all the different wacky styles that I wore in middle school and high school, trying to figure out, everyone did, what our styles were, where we fit in socially, where we fit in the world with our jobs. Like we're all trying on different hats.
Right.
And I think kind of creating a space where people can feel open, and finding spaces where you can feel open to, oh, well, here's something I might want to try, like I might just want to see what this is like. And I think I fall into that so much. I think that being asexual did push back. It makes sense for me that it pushed back when I realized I was a lesbian, because I think a lot of people realize their sexual orientation based off of sexual attraction, like who they're sexually attracted to. I don't experience that. So it wasn't until I had that really strong connection that it was like, oh, you know,
Right.
um, but I wouldn't have had that without the safety and the intimacy of that relationship, even before then.
Right. So like that was kind of like a catalyst for you to put all the different pieces together. Without that
Mhm. Yeah.
opportunity of like that safe space to kind of figure that out,
Mhm.
you may never have gotten there, or you wouldn't have gotten there as soon as you did.
Right. And I don't even know that I would have gotten there ever without the safe space that Glow and the Glow House,
Hmm.
the former Glow House, were for me. Like
Right.
my sophomore year of college, all of my close friends were in Glow. I basically lived at that house. Like I
Right.
spent so much time there. And that was honestly my first experience, having friendships with people who were part of the community,
Right.
and just made me feel so safe and welcomed, and really comfortable, kind of, I don't know, like learning more about like asexuality, and just learning more about, you know, um, all of it, just like all of it.
Right. Like, just to kind of go off your point, I think it's good that at least college kind of gave you that experience,
Mhm.
because I know in my hometown there wasn't that safe place for people like that. And like, I remember my senior year, there was um there was a girl who took a girl to a dance, like from one of the teachers who had been there like 30 years. She's like, "Oh, it's the first time we've ever seen this happen here." And I'm like, "My high school has like 5,000 people in it. It's a huge high school. Like, how has this never happened before?" And then
Wow.
and now that I've, left that town and I've lived somewhere like Lawrence, I realized just how, I guess, socially conservative it was.
Mhm.
And so, it was crazy to me. Like one of my friends growing up, a couple of them were turned out are gay, but I had no idea, and it just never occurred to me or crossed my mind when I was in high school, because it just wasn't something that we talked about in my town that much. And so now that once I got to Lawrence, then it became much more obvious, because I'd met people who were openly out, and I realized, oh, of course this person was this, and like they came out like a year later, and I was like, okay, I figured it out. So
Right.
like that, having that safe space, you know, is important, not just for the people who are trying to figure that out for themselves, but also for the people who are around them, who are trying to support them. Because if they don't have that experience to be an ally, or to be supportive, then it's hard to bridge that gap.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Gosh. So glad I moved out.
Yeah, I'm happy for you. Um, College, it's such an eye-opening experience, and man, that's so wild to me that the first same-sex couple, they've
I
ever
know,
had with
right?
all those kids.
I know. And I was like, and I mean, like, she's a really cool person. She was in my history class, and everybody was super supportive of her, but it was just like, but it was like, how could this have not happened before?
Right.
Unless her memory's not so great. I mean, I don't know. You never, but it's like, yeah, like it just seems so weird to me that a school that large would never have had that come up, at least. But I guess if your town is so unwilling to recognize those sort of things, like my town valued like football, and like that was it. So,
Mhm.
it's like, um yeah, if you didn't really meet the status quo, then you didn't really get the love and attention, I guess. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's crazy.
it's a shame.
I know. Yeah. So that was mostly what I wanted to talk about. Just kind of those main things. But is there anything else that you wanted to like, you have this platform on the internet that I'm providing. Do you want to stump speech about whatever you want to stump about? Because the mic is yours.
Yeah, wow. Um,
Yeah, you didn't expect that when you decided to come up with this.
dangerous risk you're taking. Wow.
I know.
Um, no, I think even I just really appreciate being given the opportunity. I feel terrible because I feel like I should have something, especially knowing and reading about all the awful stuff that's coming up, like all the attacks on like trans people, and
Right.
um, it's just awful. It just ugh, it makes me sick how hateful.
People
Um,
can be.
yeah, how hateful
Yeah.
people can be, society can be. I it's ugh. But I don't really have like a stump speech. I just really appreciate the platform. Even being honest, like talking about asexuality is like relatively new for me. I
Right.
feel like after I uncovered like the lesbian part of my identity, like I was like, that was like my identity,
You like
like
leaned into that a little
I'm
bit more.
lesbian. But like the asexuality thing has always been more, I I think because of my experience with the counselor, it's been harder to kind of sit with.
Well,
You know,
yeah, that's so traumatizing to be
yeah,
like, I think I'm like this, and then they're like, let's pull out the diagnosis book and
right.
see what's wrong with you. Like
Right. And
that's
she
not
never even
cool.
talked about my homesickness.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like I
ridiculous.
mean, but then again, like until you find a good therapist,
Right. And I
you know,
did. I did when I finally dared to go back, like 4 years later, I had a
right,
great therapist at Lawrence. So,
right.
so yeah, that would be another thing. If you're a counselor, don't be a dick. Pardon my French. Like,
No, that is
don't,
definitely not the worst thing that's been said on one of these talks, so don't worry.
okay. Yeah, for sure. Mental health, it's so important to be open and like to really let people, you know, we are the experts of our own experience, and like letting people kind of take the reins on that, and um I don't know, not looking at it like it's a disease.
Right.
Any part of it is so important.
Well, it's just kind of really dissociative to have someone take the reins and try to describe what you're feeling,
Right.
which I think is sometimes a lot of times what therapists do. Like they just like you talk with them and then they're like, let me recontextualize this for you, how I think you're feeling.
Right.
And it's like, but that's okay. Like,
Right. Exactly.
yeah. And like I guess I've had a lot of therapists now. Okay. I've had like 4 therapists
Okay.
and 3 of them have been like that. So
Mhm.
like, and then, the last one was not, and that was great.
Right.
But, I could imagine if that's something that you're struggling with, I come from a place of privilege as to never really having had to question my sexuality or my identity. I got the
Right.
I got
Mhm.
the easy card when it came to that,
Right.
but like struggling with that must be so immense. I've seen people, grapple with these things
Mm.
and with or without help and, you know, doing something like that, pulling out, the diagnosis book like in front of you.
Right.
Like that's not something that you should ever do, I feel
Right.
like, you
Well, and
know.
there was just so much stuff. There were trauma insinuations, and like, it was just wild. And I think it really did imprint like a lot of shame for me, like in dealing with it
Right.
from then on. And I think part of that was kind of um, made more so by the fact that people seem to be able to conceptualize, like, oh yeah, like homosexuality, I hate that word, but like same sex attraction. But like people, I think because we live in like such a sexualized society, people have a really hard time conceptualizing like not experiencing that.
I
Um,
do. I have
and
a
that,
hard time I have a hard time conceptualizing it.
yeah.
And like and I have several friends who are asexual,
Mm,
and all the power to all of you for because that's who you are, and that's great. but like for me, it just seems so, I'm choosing my words carefully.
Yeah, I'm not
Um,
gonna be offended, so
yeah, well,
you're
it's
not my
just,
therapist.
that's true. That's true. And I don't have a degree in psychology, so I can't diagnose you.
Right.
Um, but I would say, like it just is kind of alienating to me because not to say my whole worldview was dominated by sex and like my sexuality, but like it's just such an inherent part of me. Like that's just something that I've always had. Like I've always felt it. And like the idea of it not being there
Right.
is really difficult for me to process.
Right.
It's the same thing I used to when I was in, this is kind of a really bad comparison, but when I was in gym class in high school, I was a runner. And so
Mm.
oftentimes when they'd handicap kids for like events or something like that, or like we were playing a game and like
Right.
they wanted to make it harder for people, they would take away my legs. So they'd be
Right.
like, Mike, you can't use your legs today. And
Oh,
like, right. And so I'd be like, cool. Like, it's like something that I value and highly, all right, it's a part of who I was, and they
right.
took it away from me. And that made it really difficult for me to, well, enjoy gym class, but also like,
Right.
but it made me think a lot about like, wow, how am I going to do this? And like, it's the same kind of thing, not to equate legs and your identity, but
Right.
it's, I have less life experience in the area to pull on than that.
Well, no, for sure. And I think, if unless you identify as some type of somewhere along the spectrum of asexuality, like you don't realize how much sexuality is emphasized in society, and you use the word alienating, and how alienating that can feel, because you see characters in movies and love songs and all this stuff is written about something that like you just don't, that you just don't experience. And
Right.
it's really built up to be like this big thing.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just really, it's really interesting, just to kind of look at the world, how other people must view it is, it's an interesting experience.
Yeah, like to go off of that, that's our world is designed, not that it should be, but it's designed around, you know, cis white for the most part, right? Cis white experience. And so
Mhm.
for people who don't fit into that category, the things that they see like in movies or like popular music or anything like that must feel incredibly weird because you feel like you're supposed to be fitting into this thing and you don't, and it's not
Mhm.
your fault that
Right.
that's what's happening to you, but it is, and that's like that makes the whole thing I feel like a lot tougher because you're trying to be you and authentic, and then but you're not
Right.
fitting into that like what what you've been told your whole life you're supposed to be. And I feel like that's
Right.
probably
Mhm.
really really hard for people too, especially when they're first trying to figure this stuff out because they're like, I'm not what everybody says I'm supposed to be. And I feel like that's
Right.
where a lot of that shame comes from because you're not
Yeah.
fitting into,
Yeah.
I guess, society's expectations. But yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh,
It's interesting.
sounds like my son's getting ready for bed. That means we got the green
Okay.
light.
Okay. Is it time to let you go and put him to bed?
Well, I think Chelsea's gonna do that, but yeah, we don't want to be too loud because then we'll interrupt bedtime and
Sure.
whatever.
Can't have that.
No, no, he's a growing little boy. He needs his sleep.
How
He's
old is he now?
he's almost 7, which is insane.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
We were at Lawrence
Oh
like
my goodness.
2 years ago, right?
Jeez. I don't know. I graduated in 2014. Some of, this is a totally random thing. Some of the people I'm in grad school with literally just graduated, and I'm just like, man, you're so young.
I know, right?
You're so young. Oh
I
my God.
so same experience when I finished at Lawrence, I still didn't have everything I needed to get all the
Mm,
teaching licenses I wanted. So I had to go back and take
mm,
extra courses like while I was teaching to finish one of my licenses. And so I was taking
mm.
like intro college level math through like the UW like online schools or whatever. And so like, you know how
Right.
in those online courses, they're always like, first week, they're like, put a forum post up, introduce yourself, tell us all about you. And
Right.
I'd be like, hi, I'm Mike. I graduated college last year. I need this one course for this thing. I'm like 23. I
Mhm.
understand how college works. And everybody else is like, hi, I'm 17. I might log on to class once a week.
Right. It's like,
Yeah,
okay.
and it was just mind blowing. Just seeing kids that weren't Laurentians was very weird.
Right. No, I
Yeah, it
agree.
was like
The bubble is strong.
the bubble is strong. Yeah, it's the more you leave it, the more you realize probably just how much you miss it, because I do miss the bubble a lot, but also how much of an effect it might have had on your worldview a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it definitely raised my expectations for adulthood, and then it
Mhm.
sourly let me down.
Right. I know. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not cool.
I know. Come on, man. Come
Mhm.
on, Lawrence.
Like I
Be
spent
less
all
bubbly.
right. Exactly.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much for taking time. I know you're super busy and you do really important stuff. So thanks for uh, stopping by and talking,
Yeah.
um, and trying to make people more aware, because someone's got to do it and you stepped up. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. This has been a great experience. Like you're a very good interviewer.
Well, thank you.
And I appreciate being thought of and like reached out to because I don't know. It's always cool to get to do stuff like this. So I hope I've given you anything, even like a little smidge of something that's helpful.
Oh no, that was awesome. Yeah, it was great to talk to you. I think um, you know the the main point of doing this is just to kind of amplify the voices of people whose voices need to be amplified.
Mm,
Um, and if you got a YouTube channel, you might as well use it for something good.
mhm.
So, like, let's go. Let's talk about identity.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
it. Great topic.
yeah. So yeah. And if you ever want to come back and like update, or just like be a little bit more prepared and like just go on a 30-minute rant about whatever you want to talk about,
Mhm.
let me know.
Yeah, for sure.
My channel is open to such things.
For sure. If you're ever like, hey, like I'd like to know more about something you talked about, or I don't know, like ask more questions, like nothing is too personal for me. I'm an open book. So
Sweet.
feel free to hit me up.
Yeah, I feel like once I've talked with enough people, maybe at some point I might get together groups of people who categorize themselves the same way, and
Mhm.
maybe do more of a discussion amongst peers sort of thing.
Well, that would be really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then we can get into the real stuff,
Yeah,
maybe.
the
I don't
meat.
know.
I love it. I would be into it. Hey, sign me up.
Sweet. All right. You're the
Okay.
first one.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah,
Check.
put me
There
on
we
the
go.
list.
Awesome.
I love it.
Cool.
Thank you so
Well,
much, Mike. It's been
yeah,
great.
absolutely. And thank you, people who watch this, for watching LGBTQ&A.
Yeah,
Share,
thank
like,
you.
subscribe.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thank you, Mike. Have a good night.
You too.